I think we'll get underway. I know it's a busy morning. It's busy on the Hill this week. Lots of things going on. I'm delighted this morning to welcome you to this launch program for the publication and website ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN. My name is Setu Lemay. I'm the Vice President of the East-West Center, and I've had the great good fortune on this project to work with the US-ASEAN Business Council, represented here today by Ambassador Theodosius, who will speak to us shortly, but also by our colleagues at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore. And I'm going to speak very informally. I have no prepared written remarks, but I will tell you a kind of apocryphal joke is, this is the 6th edition. We did the first one in 2010. And you'll remember, for those of you policy wonks and others will remember, what we were kind of debating at that time about signing the charter and getting into EAS. And, you know, it was all part of a process and the debates around the pivot to Asia. And I said, looked out from my vantage point at the East-West Center, because we are congressionally authorized, partly congressionally appropriated, and we have a mission to bring Americans and Asians together through collaborative study, research, and exchange. And I thought, what are we going to do about this? And so we developed a way of trying to speak to about this region called, now most shorthand, ASEAN, but really Southeast Asia. And we built out a 16 by 18 folding map with graphics, which are now represented in this book. And the reason was, I was trying to make the case internally that funding was required to produce this product, but it was much cheaper to do it on a fold-out piece of paper. But it became extremely unwieldy. So one side of the paper had all the United States by congressional district mapped out by interactions with ASEAN. And the other side had these individual 8-10 graphics. And I saw them in a couple of congressional offices posted on the walls because they were looking for data sets to use because people were starting to talk about it. It was very early days, right? Well, ASEAN, and I started making the joke that someone came up to me, it's not a true story, but someone came up to me and said, you know, Setu, I just want to flag something for you. I don't understand why you pronounce Asian as ASEAN. You know, you've learned the language well since you immigrated. It's about time you do it, pronounce it correctly. And so that started this process of trying to explain ASEAN, and then we had the good, as I said, the great good fortune of working with many of our colleagues at US-ASEAN Business Council and their membership, and I'm so grateful. So let me begin with the thanks. I've said US-ASEAN Business Council and the Yusof Ishak Institute, known as the Institute for Southeast Asian Studies. Of course, Ambassador Theodosius, I must say his predecessors as well, and his current team, Mark Mealy, Maggie Hansen, Lilibeth Almonte Arbez, Sarah Lessing, Andrew Koch. And then, of course, we will hear from Director Choi Shing Kwok, who is the Director General at ISEAS, and his team, Sharon Sia and Joanne Lin. I also want to thank the US-ASEAN Business Council. I know this is really Ted's purview, but I should also say a sincere thanks to the platinum sponsor, Coca-Cola, the gold sponsor, Chevron, Expedia Group, and VinFast, and the silver sponsors, Citi, AIG, Boeing, Marriott, and Energy Capital Vietnam. We could not have done it without your support as well. And then I must thank and want to thank sincerely the leader of this particular publication, the 6th edition of ASEAN Matters for America, and that's Miss Lila Connell. Lila, stand up for a second and take. I know it looks like an extremely finished product, but there are lots of little bitty negotiations that go on. What do we call this? What's the word? Your data is different from mine. I don't want it framed this way. This color on the graphic should look this way. She negotiated all that with the partners, with the reviewers, when my eyes began to blur over and I couldn't see the numbers straight anymore. And I left it in her very capable hands. And of course, she's joined by our wonderful team, Amy Namur, Zoe Weaver, Abby Ingslew, Toya Jackson, a whole team of us here. And so a sincere thanks. So as I said, 6th edition, it is my hope that before I retire, we get to the 10th edition, and then I'm calling it quits. by that time, I have this sort of fantasy that you won't have to explain ASEAN at all because it will be so clear and evident to everyone that we won't need a briefing book, as it were, on ASEAN. But let's see. We're also delighted to have the ambassador of Indonesia. As you know, Indonesia chaired ASEAN this year, and so it's great. And there's a couple of back-to-back real home runs for Indonesia, not only on the ASEAN chairmanship, but G20. And I congratulate the ambassador. And of course, Indonesia is also the ASEAN Committee in Washington chair this year. So we're delighted to have Ambassador here, and he will address us. With that, let me turn it over to our good colleague and friend, Ambassador Theodosius.
Thank you, Satu. We were chatting. It is so easy to collaborate with the East-West Center. Thank you for your leadership. Thanks to your fantastic team for all that you've done. I remember the time when this was that fold-out map. It was kind of unwieldy. It was pretty cool. I liked the graphics. I used it out in the field, but I'm glad we've got it in this form. I know that when she made her very first trip to Southeast Asia, the Vice President took 25 copies of this with her. We saw all of the data that came out of this in her speeches. We have seen it in the hands of, actually last week, four prime ministers that we met in New York. Everybody uses this. This is on people's desks. That's what we seek. So we're really happy to welcome you all to the launch of the 6th edition of what I think is a really, really useful tool. So, and thank you again, Satu, for your vision. Let me tell you just a little bit about US-ASEAN Business Council. We're a nonprofit organization with about 175 member companies, collectively worth $7 trillion and employing more than 13 million people. And we provide education, intelligence, advocacy, and business connections. And we conduct research and analysis. And this is a perfect example of the kind of research and analysis that we do in partnership with a really wonderful institution, two wonderful institutions, because ISEAS, Yusof Ishak Institute, is also a fantastic collaborator. We have loved working with them over the years. They provide invaluable data analysis and insights in all of the kind of economic, strategic, cultural, and social dimensions of US-ASEAN ties. Like Satu and I really must do this. I want to thank those who are on the back of this publication: Coca-Cola, VinFast, Expedia Group, Chevron, Energy Capital Vietnam, Citi, AIG, Marriott, and Boeing. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your commitment to US-ASEAN relations. It means a great deal. You all know what the opportunities are, but it's incumbent on us to educate others as to what those opportunities are. And I want to thank our speakers who've come today. Very happy to see friends such as Ambassador Roslani, Bob Blake, others who are going to be addressing us later today. Thank you for your commitment to, and Ambassador Campbell, thank you for your commitment to strengthening ties with ASEAN. It does matter for America. The data's here. I think you're in this room because you know that ASEAN really, truly is a region of immense opportunities and challenges, but it's also a region of peace, stability, diversity, and friendship. The ASEAN way actually works. There are those who don't understand that building those ties, those personal ties, building trust between countries that used to be at odds is a tremendously important undertaking. I'm one of those who believes that the institution of ASEAN, creaky though it sometimes is, slow though it sometimes is, like the UN is slow, like other multilateral institutions is slow, it does a lot of good. It does a lot of good for the region and a lot of good for the world. And that region is a key partner for the United States. We exchange $508 billion annually in goods and services. It is the #1 destination for U.S. investment in the Indo-Pacific. Now, while it's a valuable trade partner, with 4 ASEAN nations in America's top 20 trade partners in the world, its strategic importance is also growing. There are quite a number of ASEAN nations that have positioned themselves as commercially viable alternatives, competitive alternatives to China. There are many companies among our members, many companies that have a China +1 strategy or a China +3 strategy. It's sensible business. It's a sensible business decision to diversify supply chains, make sure that your markets are diversified. And when you look at ASEAN, you're looking at a market of almost 700 million people. In Q1 of this year, almost 50% of all the semiconductor chips imported into the United States came from 4 ASEAN nations, led by Malaysia. ASEAN is also a vital security partner for the United States. It plays a central role in shaping regional architecture and promoting dialogue and cooperation on maritime security, counterterrorism, disaster management, and human rights issues. And it's a region of rich culture and diversity. There are over 8 million Americans who identify with an ASEAN ethnicity, including, since I served in Vietnam, 2.2 million Americans of Vietnamese origin, about 4 million Americans of Philippine origin. We share strong historical, educational, and people-to-people ties with ASEAN. So we're going to celebrate this dynamic, multifaceted relationship today. I'm eager to hear from our panelists. And with that, let me say thank you again, Satu, and back to you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute, I warmly welcome you to the official launch of the 6th edition of ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN, a publication that aims to showcase the substantive and growing ties between the United States and ASEAN. Engagement between ASEAN and the US has expanded and deepened significantly since its inception in 1977. Over the years, the relations have evolved to embrace a wide range of cooperation areas across the 3 ASEAN community pillars of security, economics, and people-to-people ties. One critical dimension over the years has been in the area of development cooperation, particularly in capacity building to help ASEAN address regional challenges and its own integration as a regional bloc. The upgrading of the ASEAN-US relations to the level of comprehensive strategic partnership last year paves the way for more new areas of cooperation that can contribute to the shared prosperity and security of both sides. As we all know, we live in a period of great uncertainty amidst the rapidly changing geopolitical environment. This will throw up many challenges, but it will also create opportunities for ASEAN and the US to work together to maintain lasting peace and stability in the region. While ASEAN states are very diverse, many recognize that the presence of the United States in the ASEAN region is a vital anchor, and that its continued support for the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, as well as other open and inclusive ASEAN-led mechanisms, will enhance ASEAN's community building efforts. On the economic front, the US remains an important trading partner of ASEAN, with total two-way trade in 2022 reaching $420 billion, making it the 2nd largest trading partner for ASEAN. On its part, ASEAN countries are collectively the 4th largest export destination for goods from the United States. In terms of investment, the US is ASEAN's largest external source of foreign direct investment last year, with total inflow amounting to $36.5 billion. While on its part, ASEAN's greenfield investments into the US are also not insignificant and support tens of thousands of jobs across many states. Apart from the economic domain, ASEAN and the United States are also working together on a number of important areas, including climate change, disaster management, public health, and the promotion of the rights of women and children, as well as human capital development that can bring tangible benefits to our people. Both sides are also strengthening cooperation on cybersecurity issues, promoting maritime security, and combating transnational crime, all of which are of growing salience to both sides. On top of this, the scope for further strengthening of the partnership on the security front remains wide, as there is a considerable reservoir of trust that has been built up over many decades of working together. In the context of these growing relations, the latest edition of ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN, helps to provide up-to-date and relevant data on the ASEAN-US relations for politicians, government officials, researchers, and the media to tap into. Beyond that, the publication also hopes to raise the awareness of both sides at the people-to-people level as to how much we matter to each other. This will solidify the foundation for us to further strengthen our partnership and to further broaden the multifaceted cooperation in the years to come. In closing, let me thank our long-term partners for this venture, the East-West Center in Washington and the US-ASEAN Business Council, and to warmly congratulate the project team for the successful publication. Finally, let me wish all of you who are present at the launch today a very fruitful time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satu. It's great to be reconnected after all these years. The issues move along, and so we get to kind of try to keep running with them as we go. So I look forward to working with you going forward as well. Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests, it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the Bureau of East Asia Pacific Affairs at the State Department. Our Assistant Secretary, Dan Crittenbrink, very much wanted to be here this morning. Unfortunately, was unable to, but he asked me to be here because we very much want to underscore from the State Department's perspective and on behalf of the U.S. government our commitment to ASEAN and our commitment at continuing to build out those ties as we go along. The United States is a proud Indo-Pacific nation, and we are committed to security and prosperity of this absolutely vital region. Deepening connections with our allies, partners, and friends is at the very core of our Indo-Pacific strategy, and ASEAN is at the center of that commitment. This commitment is borne out at the very highest levels. President Biden and Vice President Harris have already visited 6 ASEAN member states, including Vice President Harris's trip to Indonesia earlier this month for the ASEAN summits, and President Biden's trip to Vietnam for the announcement of the new US-Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The Secretaries of State, Defense, Treasury, Commerce, Health and Human Services, the U.S. Trade Representative, Secretary Kerry, and the USAID Administrator have all visited the region, many for ASEAN-related meetings or events. And in just the last year, 85 different members of both parties of Congress have visited ASEAN member states. And why is this? Because as we all know, this is why we're here, because ASEAN matters, and we understand that. Our relationship with ASEAN remains at the very heart of our engagement with the broader Indo-Pacific. The U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy calls for an empowered and unified ASEAN, and it shares many fundamental principles with the ASEAN outlook in the Indo-Pacific. As President Biden has said, ASEAN is at the very heart of the administration's efforts to secure the future that we all want to see and we all want to work together to secure. And our partnership is not static. It is expanding every day. At the end of 2022, at the US-ASEAN Summit in Phnom Penh, we upgraded the US-ASEAN relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. At this year's summit in Jakarta, we proudly announced our intention to establish a US-ASEAN Center here in Washington, and I know, like many friends and colleagues in the room, I very much look forward to seeing that facility and celebrating its opening as well. We also recently announced that the new 5-year ASEAN USAID partnership program will launch early next year. All of this, of course, is not out of nowhere. It builds off of a long-standing commitment to ASEAN. The United States has provided over $12 billion in development, economic, health, and security assistance to Southeast Asian allies and partners since 2002, and over the same period of time has provided over $1.4 billion in humanitarian assistance, including life-saving disaster assistance, emergency food aid, and support for refugees throughout Southeast Asia. And critically, our relationship bolsters the prosperity for our combined 1 billion people. The United States is the single largest source of foreign direct investment in Southeast Asia, and more than 6,200 US businesses have contributed to a record $520 billion in total trade between the United States and the nations of ASEAN in 2022, creating over 600,000 jobs in all 50 states and 1 million jobs throughout Southeast Asia. It's great to see, Satu, some of this data laid out in the book, which I have used over the years, the ASEAN Matters as well as the APEC Matters book throughout the years. Such a great resource to help tell the story that I think we are all committed to telling. Many of the jobs that I'm talking about in Southeast Asia are going to its deep reservoir of creative, solution-oriented young people. Youth comprise 34% of ASEAN member states, and this is why programs such as the Young Southeast Asia Leadership Initiative is celebrating its 10th year this year, and the US-ASEAN Institute for Rising Leaders Fellowship are so important to us. As Secretary Blinken remarked at this year's US-ASEAN ministerial meeting, young people like these and the 1 billion citizens we collectively represent are determined to write their own future and reach their full potential. Through partnerships like ours, we can better deliver that future for our citizens. And by working even more closely together in the months and years to come, we'll continue to build a stronger and more prosperous region for everyone. So the beauty of our partnership with ASEAN is that we continue to find new areas of cooperation and platforms through which we can harness this collaboration. To highlight a few, at the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum in Jakarta, we announced new activities designed to leverage over $8 billion in financing across ASEAN to promote the development of sustainable infrastructure and regional connectivity. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation is putting nearly $600 million in new financing for private sector investments across Southeast Asia that will spur economic growth, advance financial inclusion, leverage technology to expand access to education and healthcare, and support food and energy security. The US-ASEAN Platform for Infrastructure and Connectivity supports the development of high-quality and sustainable infrastructure across Southeast Asia and will facilitate implementation of the Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity in 2025. Through the US-ASEAN Transportation Partnership, the Department of Transportation has launched new air, land, and maritime transportation programs that promote safety, sustainable and resilient infrastructure, regional connectivity, and emerging transport technologies. The US-ASEAN Smart Cities Partnership advances urban innovation, water management, food and energy security, green transportation, and the provision of critical urban services. Our partnership on science, technology, and innovation is on track to provide upskilling opportunities to 50,000 entrepreneurs, professionals, and students from ASEAN countries over 3 years. Indeed, our list goes on. I could continue for much of the morning with our cooperative activities, which we are carrying out because of the clear demand signal that we see from the region every single day for increased and sustained engagement from the United States, and we are absolutely prepared to respond to that signal. At this year's summits in Jakarta, there were many concerning regional and global issues to discuss, and as we did, we were proud to highlight our agenda, as I just described, and the many positive areas of cooperation between the United States and ASEAN, which expand by the day. So I think when you put this package together, you can really see that in real terms for us every single day, ASEAN absolutely matters for us. We believe the United States matters for ASEAN as well, and we are prepared to play our part to carry that mission forward. Thank you very much.
We're going to make a slight adjustment in the program that we have just to accommodate a very important person, but also a longtime supporter of the ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN project. He serves as the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and ranking member on the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee. He is a medical doctor, elected member of Congress from the Sacramento County area of California. He's the longest serving Indian American member of Congress. It brings me great pride as an Indian American to have Representative Barra with us. His accomplishments and experience go on and on, but thank you once again for gracing us, but also supporting our U.S. Southeast Asia relationship in Congress. Congressman. Thank you so much. Thank you, appreciate it.
I was just looking at all the ASEAN members, and in the last couple of years, I've visited all the countries. I've got to get to Brunei, and Myanmar. We'll wait on that for a little bit, but we'll work on getting out there as well. And that one's a little bit more complicated. But in all my visits there, it's really about ASEAN centrality, right? And the reason why it's so important, you see more congressional delegations going. It's not about the countries of Southeast Asia being caught between great power competition. It's about ASEAN centrality, understanding that this is an incredibly dynamic region. It's a young population on the move. When you go to Indonesia, one of the largest democracies in the world, you see some of that vibrancy. The vibrant economy in Vietnam, some of the challenges, but the importance of looking at what's happening along the Mekong, understanding climate change and its impact. And these are all places where a strong partnership is emerging, both between Congress and the relative the parliaments, but also between the administration. I think you see the high-level 2x2s from the early days of the Biden administration. The G20, the recently inked deal with Vietnam. These are all incredibly important. And then when I think about our corporate sector, our business sector, coming out of the pandemic, all of us realized the importance of having resilient and redundant supply chains. And in our conversations there, as we look at that, and it's not just the United States. When we talk to other partners like Japan, Korea, it is in a very strategic way building these resilient supply chains where they make sense, and strategically taking advantage of some of these economies in Southeast Asia to both strengthen our trading relationship, but to help direct new outbound investment into some of these markets. And I think that's a ripe opportunity where we can continue to grow our partnership. And then it is, again, when we talk about ASEAN centrality, it's also, there was in the 75 years post-World War II a rules-based order that really did help folks thrive. So when we think about some of the challenges in the South China Sea, some of the aggressive moves that are infringing on the Philippines, exclusive economic zone, Vietnam, et cetera, we've got to really construct a rules-based order with our like-minded allies. Again, competition with others is not a bad thing. It brings out the best. But again, in that rules-based order, these are very important maritime straits, and freedom of navigation, movement of goods and services is extremely important, not only to our interests, but also clearly to the interests of the countries in that region. So respecting the economic zones, respecting sovereignty, those are issues that matter very much to the countries in that region. So, again, thank you for putting out this publication. I think it's incredibly important, not just, again, to the countries in the region, but also to my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, to understand why this is such a vibrant region. And again, we look forward to a closer partnership with the countries in Southeast Asia. And I look forward to visiting Brunei and one day visiting Myanmar. Thank you.
We are now delighted to turn back to our keynote remarks again, and we have with us, as I mentioned earlier, Ambassador Roslani of Indonesia. He is the 21st appointed ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the United States. Was appointed by, of course, President Joko Widodo. And not only is he a diplomat, but he has this extensive experience in the business sector. And understands economics, commerce, business, actual companies doing work. And so I think it's a particularly fitting that we have your combination of Indonesia as the chair of ASEAN, having hosted G20 the previous year, and on this effort, which seeks to highlight some of the commercial and business element. We welcome you and thank you for being here, Ambassador Roslani. Please.
Very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Satu Limaye and also East-West Center for inviting me today and giving some remarks. I would like to mention it, Dr. Satu Limaye. In Indonesia, satu mean one, lima mean five. So when I met with you in the past, like what is 1 and 5, so satu lima.
And Ambassador, I can tell you I have a twin brother whose name is Dua. 2.
Really?
No.
You got me there, thank you.
But I do have a twin brother.
Okay. And I'm also very pleased to see a lot of familiar faces. Ambassador Ted Osius, Ambassador Bob Blake, Ambassador Campbell, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin to expressing my deep appreciation to East and West Center for their commitment to fostering an understanding and cooperation between US and the ASEAN member states. The publication we are launching today, ASEAN Matters for America, America Matters for ASEAN, is a testament to the significance of this relationship. It highlights the multidimensional connection between the US and ASEAN. As we celebrate the publication launch today, let us also reflect the broader significance of the US-ASEAN relationship. ASEAN has emerged as a cornerstone of stability, prosperity, and dialogue in Southeast Asia. For over 4 decades, the US has been a steadfast partner in this journey, recognizing the strategic significance of Southeast Asia. The US-ASEAN Summit in Jakarta early this month was a landmark event in the relationship. The summit was a resounding success. The leaders reaffirmed the commitment to a strong and enduring ASEAN-US partnership. They also agreed to work together to address a wide range of challenges, including economic recovery, climate change, and maritime security. The establishment of the US-ASEAN Center was another important outcome of the summit. The center will serve as a hub for cooperation on a wide range of issues, including trade, investment, education, and culture. On this occasion, allow me to share 2 points that are important of the ASEAN-US relationship. First, ASEAN is the major economic and security player in the Asia-Pacific region. It is the world's 4th largest market and the 5th largest economy in the world. Our trade and investment ties are stronger than ever before. In 2022, US-ASEAN trade in goods and services totaled over $500 billion. The US is also the largest source of foreign direct investment in ASEAN. US engagement with ASEAN is not merely a matter of policy, it is the recognition of region potential and its role as an economic powerhouse. The economic interdependence benefit both sides, creating jobs, fostering innovation, and driving growth. Second, the United States has a strong interest in peaceful and prosperous Asia-Pacific region. ASEAN is central to this vision, and ASEAN plays a leading role in promoting regional cooperation and stability. Well, I'm glad that Ambassador Ted Osius mentioning about ASEAN Way. I know sometimes it's very hard to digest for a lot of people because sometimes it's, we go very slow. We have a lot of meetings together, right? But it works. We maintain peace and stability for many decades. This is ASEAN Way, and even though they said, ASEAN is the very loose association in the region, but I think so far ASEAN works very well. ASEAN also play a pivotal role in shaping and in regional architecture of the Indo-Pacific. It promotes a vision of Indo-Pacific that is inclusive, open, and rules-based. The vision aligns closely with the US interest in the region, underscoring the importance of freedom of navigation, peaceful resolution of disputes, and respect for international law. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN Matters for America and America Matters for ASEAN is not just a slogan. It is a reflection of the intertwined destinies of our 2 regions. Today's publication is an important resource that will further deepen our understanding of this vital relationship. Let us use it as a tool to strengthen our bonds, enhance cooperation, and work towards a more prosperous and secure future for ASEAN and the US. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Aslani, and really appreciate your making the time to be here with us today and for your remarks. We're delighted now to turn to one of the platinum sponsors of and members of the US-ASEAN Business Council who made this report possible, amongst other colleagues, and we're as represented as Senior Manager of Federal and Diplomatic Government Relations for the Coca-Cola Company. So I'm delighted to welcome and thank Sean Gerritsen. Please, sir.
Thank you so much. Whenever I can come in somewhere and have a full breakfast, I feel like the day has started great, so I'm good to go. It's Sean Gerritsen with the Coca-Cola Company. It's just a great pleasure to be here today. As we reflect on the history of the U.S.-ASEAN relations, we're reminded of the remarkable progress we've made in promoting peace, economic growth, and cultural exchange. This joint collaboration and the Yusof Ishak Institute captures the essence of how strong U.S.-ASEAN relations are mutually beneficial for the U.S. and the ASEAN world itself. In my day job, I work on sustainability, climate, energy issues. So that's really at the forefront of the agenda for the Coca-Cola Company. We wouldn't be standing here, we wouldn't be lasting as long as we have if we didn't think about the world both now and in the future. So sustainability is at the forefront of our agenda. And as a U.S. company with a long-standing presence in the ASEAN region, we'll focus on sustainable and inclusive growth that is good for our business, our people, and most of all, our communities that matter the most. This involves us working every day to refresh our consumers and make a difference across the region through our brands, local business presence, and sustainability initiatives that are very much present in the Asian region. To support packaging circularity, we roll out a 100% rPET recycled Coca-Cola bottle. Basically, the bottle you have in your store that you pick up, that full bottle can be captured and recaptured and recirculated in an amount of 8 times, which is very good for the environment and for the world. So we've infiltrated that a lot in the United States, and it's been a little bit better and more prevalent throughout the Asian nations and across the world. The U.S., we're kind of a little slow to the game, so we're going to pick that back up and get that stronger both on the East and West Coast regions. And we're also doing our part in water. Water is a big thing around our sustainability goals. In the water community programs, we're focused on replenishing the water we use in our beverages. We have for every dropout, we want to find a water project throughout the world, throughout the U.S. that brings water back in. It's just like for every bottle we have out there or every can, we want to make sure we get that back into circulation so no can or no bottle goes astray. And this is very prevalent in the partner nations and organizations that increase water access and water security through initiatives like Aqua Tower water filtration systems in Cambodia, water reservoirs in Indonesia, water retention ponds in Thailand, and reforestation projects in the Philippines. So while we're the Coca-Cola Company, we're the brand that you drink, we're heavily ingratiated throughout the world, particularly around water. It's one of our big goals. So through these efforts and more, we want to create a positive impact on the environment. So we just want to extend a heartfelt gratitude to you all. Thank you for having us here today. Hopefully you'll have us back. Hopefully we'll continue this great partnership because our endeavors and collaboration continue to foster peace, prosperity, and friendship between the U.S. and ASEAN nations and serve as a beacon of cooperation for the wider world. Thank you so much, and we appreciate this partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. Thank you for your remarks today of Coca-Cola's support to this project and your work and in commercial work in the region. Thank you so much. We're going to invite, we have the ASEAN Caucus co-chair, Representative Wagner of Missouri, going to make some video remarks that Ms. Jackson, Toya Jackson, is going to host. But as she gets that set up, I just want to acknowledge that we have one of the East-West Center Board of Governors members has joined us, Ambassador Kelly Curry. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us this morning. If you don't know, the East-West Center's board is appointed, half of the board is appointed by the Secretary of State of the United States, and that cycles through a term, obviously. And then half of our board is appointed by the Governor of Hawaii, where we have our legal status as our main campus. And that board, in turn, picks a board from the region. So this is a good occasion also to mention that we have board members representing the Indo-Pacific region. And if I may say, Ambassador Aslani, we are very grateful to have with us Mr. Chris Cantor, who is our board member from Indonesia. I just saw him last month in Jakarta, and it's always wonderful to have his support as well. So we're very well connected, both to the state of Hawaii, through the national government of the United States of America, and of course, represented in the Indo-Pacific region. So thank you, Kelly, and over to Representative Wagner, Toya.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Wagner, and I am proud to represent Missouri's 2nd District in Congress. I congratulate you all on the successful launch of the Why ASEAN Matters for America publication. This report is a critical resource for the bipartisan ASEAN caucus, which I am proud to co-chair with Representative Joaquin Castro. And it's just as important for the diplomats, policymakers, and the business community leaders who understand the immense strategic and economic value ASEAN holds for the United States. This powerhouse region joins the Indian and Pacific Ocean regions and serves as a conduit for global trade. The Southeast Asian states are increasingly vital to the prosperity of the U.S. economy, generating hundreds of thousands of American jobs and investing more in our economy than China and India combined. We have a national interest in sustaining and deepening our long-standing relationship with ASEAN and its member states, not only because we recognize the serious threat the People's Republic of China poses to all regional actors, but because this relationship makes America and Southeast Asia more prosperous and more secure. That's why I championed the Southeast Asia Strategy Act, which I'm proud to say is now law and requires the U.S. to get on the record in support of U.S. Southeast Asian cooperation. Thanks to this bill, the United States is now required to craft a comprehensive regional strategy encompassing the full range of issues about which our nations care deeply: trade and economic development, security cooperation, rule of law, and freedom of navigation. We in Congress are absolutely committed to advancing ties between the U.S. and ASEAN. I encourage you to reach out when we can be helpful, and I thank you for your insights, your expertise, and your tireless work in support of this essential partnership.
Terrific, and thank you to Representative Wagner. She's, over the years, many of our launches, and through the process of making these publications, has been greatly supportive. As she said, she's the ASEAN co-chair, along with Representative Joaquin Castro of Texas, who has also been, of course, a great supporter of this effort and, of course, U.S. Southeast Asia relations. Now, we go a little bit less formal and a little bit more kind of dialogue. We call them fireside chats. We don't have a fireplace. But we'll let our imaginations run. And the first fireside chat, unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we invited Derek Grossman. Many of you will know, works at RAND Corporation on a variety of Indo-Pacific issues. He couldn't send his remarks, but we are lucky because we have a former diplomat, now academic, and both, in Ambassador Piper Campbell. So may I invite Ambassador to come up, and we're just going to have a few minutes of discussion on the state of sort of diplomatic, security, foreign policy issues, and then we'll turn to a commercial panel, and we have a wonderful lineup there too. You know, maybe start us off with kind of where are we on the U.S. Southeast Asia relationship, that you can say things now not as a member of the Senior Foreign Service, and sort of where are we?
Yeah, and that's one of the funnest things about being an academic as opposed to a diplomat, is that I don't need to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
I have tremendous respect for all of the important things that the United States government is doing with Southeast Asia, the Southeast Asian region. I have tremendous respect for Vice President Harris and the leadership that she has shown in traveling to the region and really sort of highlighting the U.S. investment and interest in the Asian Pacific region, in the Indo-Pacific. But at the same time, I think we also need to name the fact, something that Representative Berra highlighted, something that Ambassador Roslan highlighted, there is, and Ambassador Osias as well, there is an ASEAN way. There is agency in the region, and there is an interest in the region in engaging with the United States on the region's terms and in the region's way. And for President Biden not to participate in the East Asian Summit was sort of, let's say, an own goal. It was an opportunity missed to engage with the region in the region's way.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, these high-level visits we've heard over the years, not only the ASEAN way, but showing up is important. You know, in the Pacific, we just had earlier this week, as many of you will know, second U.S. Pacific Islands Summit. It was called the Pacific Islands Forum Summit. And one of the phrases that we are using now on the Pacific Matters is nothing in the Pacific without the Pacific. Yeah. And I've often thought we should kind of have an analogous phrase in Southeast Asia is, you know, something along the lines of a partnership with ASEAN that recognize. So I appreciate that. And we have, you know, those blips about visits and at what level. And yet the undergirding of what this report shows, all the wonderful work of our various departments and agencies, everything from environmental issues to sustainability to diplomacy, et cetera, is pretty strong. So if you had an area where you thought we needed to particularly press, what would that be?
So I think something along the lines of what you just said, I think something that many people don't understand about ASEAN is how much ASEAN is about connectivity, about connecting the countries in the region and creating a forum, a platform really, actually more than a forum, for entities, businesses, countries, individuals from outside the region to connect with the region. And so sometimes we put an awful lot of emphasis on the summits, the high-level meetings, but it's important to understand that ASEAN is the ministers of tourism, and not just the ministers, but the experts in health, in trade, in so many different areas. And so something that I would like to see as we continue to talk about why ASEAN matters for the United States and the U.S. matters for ASEAN. And I should note this is my second time participating in the launch of one of these, so it's a great pleasure to be here. But I'd love for us to be talking with that kind of subtlety about what we mean when we say ASEAN and understanding the range of interactions, the range of systems that are really created through the ASEAN way and through the ASEAN mechanisms.
Thank you, Piper. That's really helpful. And I'll just flag one thing which is relevant to this discussion about ASEAN's kind of deep connections throughout all its ministers and all its meetings, and we've talked about that. And one thing that the East-West Center, I'm really delighted to announce, is starting this year under the leadership of my colleague who's here somewhere, Miss Abby Hull, is we're starting a governor's staff program for U.S. governors to go to Asia. And then we will bring provincial level officials from the region. Now, this doesn't obviously replace this. Be very small cohorts, doesn't replace any other program, YSEAL or anything. But I want to, in the spirit of Asia Matters for America, yes, of course, State Department, NSC, White House, that's given. But how can America, how can our country engage at all levels with this network? And so I'm really appreciative of this comment. So stay tuned, because we plan to expand that.
There's a real recognition of the increased importance of subnational diplomacy, and it sounds like that's right along the lines.
That's exactly what we're going to, is our next step with this product and project. I want to turn to, in the spirit of ASEAN and its issues. So things are changing. I mean, 10 years ago, I remember Kurt Campbell, then EAS Assistant Secretary, EAP Assistant Secretary, used to talk about, you know, making EAS kind of this, the main core of our regional multilateral effort. Times have changed. We now have Quad, we have AUKUS, we have functional partnership, mineral security partnership, Chip 4 Alliance. You know, there are various levels, various ways. What does this do to the ASEAN project? How do we integrate it? On the same hand, notwithstanding Ambassador Roslani's very eloquent and convincing case for ASEAN, and I've made the case myself in writing, how can ASEAN adapt and how can we work with ASEAN in this new configurations?
So I know Assistant Secretary Dan Crittenbrink talks about thinking about U.S. engagement in the Indo-Pacific as a lattice work. And I like that phrase. Victor Cha, I think, originated the idea of a sort of a patchwork, but there's something that's a little more elegant, a little neater about lattice work. I think the important thing is understanding that the minilaterals, the bilateral agreements, the strategic partnerships are extremely important, but they do not replace the importance of engaging with ASEAN. So I'd like to see the conversation be more around how these things are additive and complementary to each other. And the other aspect of that is that events like the East Asia Summit have traditionally provided great platforms for all the work that goes on in the corridors, all the work that goes on in the sides. And so again, it isn't a situation where it needs to be or should be either or. It's really a situation where I think a clear-eyed look at the advantages, at the purposes, and at really the strengths of different types of engagement, but not a clear-eyed, selfish or self-promoting, but a clear-eyed look that really asks not only what we, the United States, want, but what our partners want. And a recognition that in diplomacy, you need to be designing things that meet our interests and our partners' interests. And so if our partners are asking us to keep ASEAN at the center, I think that's a demand signal we need to be listening to. And I think that's one of the reasons putting out a document about how ASEAN matters for America is really important at this time.
That's really great. I'm going to follow up with you offline because I have a concept that we can that build on the sort of the demand side in ASEAN for connecting with these other frameworks, and we can maybe perhaps pursue that and think about what that would look like and how we can meet those the demand signals in the region. I want to turn to a last question on defense and security because it's a big issue. Many of us will have seen in the press, you know, the activities on the South China Sea by a large country in the region and responses to that by the large country in the region. So, you know, I don't want to take on what that country is doing and the assertiveness and the aggressiveness of those issues. I'm interested in how Southeast Asia and ASEAN, what's changed about their response? Because it doesn't seem to me over the last decade that the behavior on the supply side of that assertiveness and aggression has changed. So the question is, what, if anything, has changed on the response side of ASEAN and Southeast Asia?
I think we're seeing interesting things on the response side, even this week, where you know, the actions of a single Coast Guard diver can sort of stand as a symbol for an entire country's desire and resistance or willingness to stand up to and willingness to call out behavior that's inconsistent with international norms, willingness to stand up for itself. And that we're seeing that not only with that behavior, but also, I'd say, in a different way, in a more subtle way, in things like the ASEAN countries first exercise. And I'm being careful not to call it a military exercise. Right. But the actions of the ASEAN countries pulling together to have that kind of exercise, to show both their ability and their interest in increasing interoperability and working together in areas like humanitarian assistance, which of course is an important area for the region, But I think there's something new there, something new and something important, and both the combined response and in the individual
And the
response.
individual. That's very useful, Ambassador, and great to have that insight. I hope we can continue that process, but also build on the kind of attempts at bilaterals and trilateral levels within ASEAN to sort of deconflict some of the claims and arrive at more common positions. I think would
that would be
supplement.
really important if they can move forward on that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Piper Campbell. We now turn, and terrific discussion from Ambassador Campbell. We'll try Derek Grossman again. We always welcome additional views and viewpoints, but maybe Ted for the 7th edition, perhaps. Look, let's turn to the fireside chat and close out our program. I'm mindful of everyone's busy schedule, but this is commercial trade, investment, energy in US-ASEAN relations, and we have just a fantastic set of commentators and experts here. Lilibeth Almonte Arbez, the Senior Director for Maritime Southeast Asia and International Trade Policy at USABC. We have Ambassador Bob Blake, another long-serving senior diplomat for our country, and now managing director of McLarty Associates, and Anthony Nelson, formerly of the US-ASEAN Business Council, and now the associate partner on East Asia and Pacific practice at the Albright Stonebridge Group. May I invite you here, please, and we'll just do a informal chat as we've done. Hey, that's great. Thank you guys so much for making your way here and joining us and sharing your expertise. We've heard a lot about the numbers and the stats and the trends and, kind of this really solid relationship, sort of underweighted, underknown relationship in the region when we talk about big players. So I'm going to start the first question with getting a perspective from each of you. All right, what are the challenges to this? What are we seeing? IMF has put out a report on the fragmenting international system. We have issues about the rules-based order and the WTO. We have different political mindsets about trade these days in our country and elsewhere. How does this relate to Southeast Asia? Bob, you want to start out?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank the East-West Center and USATU for this wonderful publication. I do a lot of speaking about Southeast Asia around the country, and these are sort of my cliff notes. I mean, it's got everything you need to know about trade and investment and students and university partnerships and all kinds of other really, really important things. So it's really terrific. And for those of us who had to try to wade through American government statistics, this is really a blessing. In terms of the challenges, I think ASEAN is really responding to a lot of the challenges that we face. So, for example, many of our companies now are facing very serious supply chain issues. And so we're really seeing that as companies look to diversify their supply chains and improve their resilience, where are they going? Mostly they're going to Southeast Asia. They're going to Vietnam, but also to other countries as well. So I think you're seeing a really positive movement in that direction. Another one that we've talked a lot about is healthcare resilience. The study here talks about healthcare resilience. We all know about the challenges that we faced with our healthcare supply chains after COVID and during COVID. And again, I think the ASEAN countries really responded to that. And I think there's really a very good opportunity going forward to work with particularly countries like Singapore, who have incredible research capabilities, to think through how are we going to respond to the next COVID or other healthcare crisis. And so again, we're seeing a lot more healthcare engagement by our companies. And again, I think ASEAN can really be a center of that. So, I believe ASEAN is really stepping up in many ways. The other area I'd like to point to maybe is the tech sector. We all talk about the great tech sector. They're obviously under a little bit of pressure right now here in the United States. And I think there are major opportunities for the tech sector, particularly on the digital economy side in Southeast Asia. Obviously, Indonesia is leading the charge in that respect, not just in terms of investment opportunities, but also in terms of a lot of the innovation that is taking place now. And you're seeing just a huge growth of startups in Indonesia, but in other parts of the world as well. So I think again, the digital economy and the tech sector offer just huge opportunities for American companies in Southeast Asia. So those are three that I'd mention.
Thanks so much, Bob. Anthony, over to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think a lot of ways, Ambassador Blake covered a lot of great ground.
Hey, Anthony, you have a big, wonderful, booming voice, but please turn that on for the audio and the recording. Yeah,
There we go. Okay.
Thank you, good sir.
No problem. I think I think a lot of ways one of the biggest challenges is our own mindset. Really, this report is so great, and I noticed looking through the material that the first edition was released in 2009. And 2009 was the year of a very momentous development in US-ASEAN relations. Do you know what I'm referring to, Satu?
Which one? The signing of the TAC?
That's important, but I was referring to when I started working on ASEAN, which is very
Right.
important.
We must conflate
very
our
important.
personal lives with our professional lives.
That's right. But one of the things I worked on early was the America Matters for ASEAN, and I remember sort of compiling and pulling together, helping some of these great little talking points here. And this one I remember particularly. ASEAN is the #1 destination for U.S. investment in the Indo-Pacific, more than China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan combined. And I remember sort of combining different combinations of countries to see what would be kind of the most impressive combination that we could get. But what the main thing I remember about that is once we had the number, everyone was absolutely shocked. Nobody had any idea that this was what we were going to come out with. And the interest for business was all there already. And it had happened without any attention to geopolitics, without any attention to the need for a China +1 or to hedge against this, against that. It had just happened by businesses looking at the markets and engaging with them, as Ambassador Campbell said, on their own terms. And I think that's a challenge that we struggle with quite a lot right now, is how to look at ASEAN for its own sake and not try to fit it into the boxes of our geopolitical challenges. And I think one real symptom of this is how many times have you read an article about RCEP, about the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and seen it referred to as China-led? The China-led RCEP. It's not China-led at all. It's ASEAN-led. The only reason China has influence in it is because they engaged in it, because they engaged in the process on ASEAN's terms. And I think that's our challenge right now. Obviously, we hold everything within our overall global priorities, but it's really important to look at ASEAN for all the many, many reasons for why it matters, and kind of challenge ourselves to, and actually I think everybody here today has done a fantastic job of having conversations about ASEAN without talking about China.
Thank you so much, Anthony. That's really important, a reminder that part of it is this larger context, apart from specific policy. Elizabeth, over to you for your thoughts.
Thank you, Satu. Like Anthony, I'd like to delve into the report. It's fantastic. Look, I've used it already, and I hope many of you in the room would use it too. So ASEAN is not just the #1 FDI destination for the United States. ASEAN creates over 625,000 jobs in this country, with 29 states exporting over $1 billion. I can go on, but there's 42,000 U.S. companies that benefit from this trade and investment, and the trajectory just shows us that it will continue to grow. Just this year, 4 out of the 20 top trading partners for the United States are ASEAN countries. And so we have that landscape, and your question was, what are the challenges? The question, I turn back the question to you, to whom is the challenge? First off, I guess for the United States government, after elevating, the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership, the question always is how long and how durable and how sustained that partnership would be. That is a common question, not just here in the United States, but also in ASEAN. Now, for U.S. companies, this is no secret. The uneven policy landscape in Southeast Asia keeps us in business, keeps the council, organizations like the council in business. And to the point of trying to unify ASEAN and really having that centrality, how does that translate to U.S. business is still a challenge. But there are opportunities. We always say in ASEAN, challenges always represent opportunities. And this is where you see countries coming together, negotiating frameworks such as the digital Economy Framework Agreement, which was launched last month. Negotiations will start towards the end of the year, and that's the clear signaling from the region in trying to harmonize and make it easier for companies to operate there. And last but not the least, to Ambassador Blake's point about resilience, resilience is also a competitive landscape. It's not just resilience for US firms. Many other companies, whether they're European, Chinese, also play in Southeast Asia. And so to really to really realize opportunities in Southeast Asia, companies, US government need to stay in the region. That needs to play the long game. And I'll pause there and
Thank you, Luba. Thanks very much. Bob Blake wanted to add
I just wanted to add one more thing,
Yeah,
which I
please.
think is important for everybody here. Another really important trend, I think, in ASEAN is towards sustainability and addressing climate change. Many of you know I had the privilege of working with Secretary Kerry on the Indonesia Just Energy Transition Partnership, a $20 billion deal to help that country to decarbonize. A similar deal was signed with Vietnam. And it's really significant that those two countries were chosen. Kerry could have gone anywhere in the world, but he wanted to find people who were, first of all, close partners, but also countries that were willing to take really serious action. So, you know, and I think that shows that there are really important things happening now on the climate front. There was a lot of gloom at the recent UN General Assembly last week about climate in general, but one of the countries that announced more ambition was Thailand. So again, I think there's kind of a very positive trend that's taking place. And consistent with that is also you're beginning to see ASEAN itself start to work on, you know, various kinds of electricity pipelines between that are uniting various countries, even cross-border and even cross-strait opportunities. So this is going to be a growing area of opportunity for American companies, I think. And we talked a little bit about, Sean talked about plastics. ASEAN is both one of the major sources of plastics in the world, but also now many of those countries like Indonesia and others are taking serious action as well. And I think that's really, really important. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for recycling, for reuse, and other opportunities to help those countries.
Thanks so much, Bob. Let me take one last question, and Lilibeth, I'd like to start with you this time and keep you on the spotlight. We're in Washington. We're in the environment we're in. Sort of a policy question, kind of how do you guys, working on Southeast Asia day in, day out, very granular levels, also policy levels, where is Southeast Asia on the Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership? What do they expect from it? How optimistic are they that this matters? We've all heard that it doesn't have market access, but we have a number of countries signed up to, you know, different pillars or all pillars, depending on the country. This is, to me, a central tension of American Indo-Pacific policy is, if you will, the question of trans-Pacific integration versus intra-Asian integration. And intra-Asian integration has been proceeding at a pace empirically faster than trans-Pacific. Not that trans-Pacific isn't huge, as this report makes clear. But if you're looking at 20 years timeline, is the Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership sufficient as a tool set to narrow this delta? Lilibeth.
Thank you, Satu. As you know, I was a former insider, so we always say ASEAN is at the heart of the Indo-Pacific. Even if only 7 out of 10 officially are part of the IPEF negotiations, the sense in the region is this is the right step in the right direction. Even if intra-ASEAN or ASEAN plus 3 integration is at a faster pace, if you look at the value of the Indo-Pacific region, it's considerably so much more than intra-ASEAN trade.
Sure.
So when you look at the prize at the end of the tunnel, certainly that was what TPP, CPTPP was about. And there's this sense of of waiting for the United States to fully come on board, and that's why there's jokes about, when are you going to shoot that ball, to use an analogy in basketball. So the Indo-Pacific is certainly anchored on ASEAN as at its core. It's not perfect, but for us, it's an opportunity to have building blocks that will push more integration and have concrete outcomes. And we are hopeful in November. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anthony, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think
What are you hearing?
what I hear is it's a little bit like if you have a friend who just had a baby, and they can't go on the weekend trip, they can't take a couple hours to go to the game, but maybe once in a while you can get an hour out of them to talk about something, and it's kind of, we'll take what we can get. And we hope one day we'll come back to the full range of activities and the full, but we understand you're distracted. There's domestic issues that keep you from being able to kind of maybe fully engage with what we had hoped the relationship could be. But the relationship is important. We want to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try that out on my 19-year-old. You are currently a domestic issue. And I'm distracted. Bob.
I associate myself. I'd like to just maybe pivot in a little bit of a different direction, which is IPEF, as we all know, hasn't really offered market access, and that's what everybody is most interested in. I do believe there's a lot of utility to IPEF, but I think one of the things that I hope the administration is going to be a little bit more flexible on is this really, really important question of critical minerals. And as many of you know, there are several of the countries, Indonesia, for example, but several others as well, have plentiful supplies of these critical minerals like nickel and cobalt and others that we're going to need for EV, but also for wind turbines and a lot of other things. And as you also know, China's busily locking up a lot of these supplies now and making huge investments. And all of these countries would like to see more investment from the United States, but we've got to change our tax laws to make it more of an incentive for American companies to invest in those things. And I think the administration is being a little bit too cautious here in its outlook. And I think that there's a major opportunity to do more. And if we get American companies into places like Indonesia and the Philippines and others, of course they're going to respect our environmental and labor laws, which is obviously a major White House concern. And so by definition, they're going to improve the situation in all those countries. So I'd like to make a pitch on that because I think it's really, really important. And I think it's a great opportunity for our companies, but also a great opportunity for our country. And we just need a little bit more flexibility from the administration on that.
Bob, I can't just to help follow up because I was, nowadays with all of the information sources, I'm not sure whether I saw it, read it, was on social media, but there's a new lithium mine, if I'm not mistaken, in northern Minnesota. And I can't remember whether I saw this report. Now, I was considering this because I spent some years in the energy business. And I was thinking, from a company's viewpoint, changing the laws to be able to go into the Philippines and Indonesia is certainly welcome, would be great, expand, et cetera. But do those laws not privilege that work and instead track them towards domestic investment? Not all minerals are available domestically,
Right.
but certainly some are.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm definitely America first. I'd like to see more investment in the United States. But again, we don't have the supplies of these minerals. So, and as you all know, one of the big trends around the world now is nationalism. And every country in the world is doing more to encourage localization, including our own. So, so we've got to go to where the actual deposits are. And in some cases, that's not going to be very, in places like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they're not the most felicitous places to be working. But, we've got to go where the deposits are, in my view. And we also have a trend here in the United States, which is the not in my backyard.
Right.
There are a lot of communities that don't want to see these large investments take place, they worry about the pollution, they worry about air pollution, water pollution, and other impacts. And so, again, all of these partners in ASEAN really welcome these initiatives and would like to see diversification away from China.
Wonderful. Well, that wraps up a terrific panel from our experts on the economic and commercial issues. I want to thank Lilibeth, Anthony, and Bob Blake for your wonderful remarks and insights.